There's nothing worse than coming into work feeling anxious because you're not sure how someone's going to react.
Communicating the effectiveness and the importance of people's roles will go far.
There should be no reason for our teammates to be coming into work fearful.
If you don't feel safe, you literally can't be yourself and you can't thrive.
Yeah. Yo, what's up, party people? We are back with another podcast, a leadership podcast here on Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. And I'm joined here by Dawson Johnson.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Dawson?
Good. I'm ready.
Let's go.
This is another good chapter. I'm ready to talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, we're missing our third musketeer, or our first musketeer, actually, because he's the oldest, Joel Flaming. Shout out to him. He is being pulled into full-time daddy duty. As we mentioned in our last episode, we've got kids on the way. Dawson and his wife has a kid on the way. Joel and Becca have a kid on the way, and this release on Monday. We're filming on a Wednesday. So what if the kid's already born? That'd be crazy.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, because the next week.
I don't know. Yeah, this will be old news if that's the case.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
He'll need all the prayers and.
Yes, all the thoughts and prayers. And so we're going to miss him today. Yeah. He provided some riveting conversation on our previous 3 episodes. Be sure to check that out. But this episode is going to be just as good in the sense of the quality of leadership material that we're going to be covering from the book, The Way of the Shepherd by Dr. Lehman and Pentak. If you have not read this book, make sure you do so. We are unpacking the truths from it. And we are unpacking, I think, the fourth chapter, and this states, make your pasture a safe place. Mm-hmm. Ooh. All right. From the rip, Dawson, what are your initial thoughts? Espouse that principle for us. What does it mean to make your pasture a safe place?
Yeah, this was another good chapter. It actually got me in my feels a little bit because I'm very passionate about kids, family. Obviously, I'm a parent now, so this one kind of touched home, but it really just made me think of how important it is to make sure that every place that you're in, whether it's a job, family, that it's just something where every person that's a part of it just feels safe. And going through this chapter with each point, it just made me think of how many people sometimes struggle with finding a safe place and how it just affects them in all different spaces of life. And so this is a good one. It had a lot of good points on how to make sure that your place is a safe
I think
space,
the added perspective of you being a father, I think plays into this. I can't speak for it because I'm not one, but I imagine having that empathy for your kid can translate to your team. Obviously, your kid, you're going to love your kid more than your teammates, no matter how much you love them. But even, we were chatting before we went on air, with childcare and decisions on that. It's like, wow, and trusting other people with your kid is it's a big deal.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. That's literally that. Yeah. And just hoping that area is safe. That's the biggest thing for me, regardless of how expensive it is. Just, is my kid safe? That's the number one thing I was thinking about. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so we're talking all about safety in this chapter as we unpack its contents, and obviously not just physical safety, but we're talking emotional safety, just a feeling where people can just feel at home amongst their team. Mm-hmm. There's nothing worse than coming into work feeling anxious because you're not sure how someone's going to react, whether it's the boss, a teammate, or whatever it may be, and depending on what you guys do for work, the listeners. There could be your customers could be a source of tension and anxiousness. Mm-hmm. So to have an internal anxiousness within your team added on top of an external anxiousness is a double whammy. Yeah. There's actually a book called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. And he talks about leaders need to cultivate what he calls a circle of safety in your team. Where I think he used the illustration of people on the battlefield. I think he might have used the Spartans or something, the classic story of the shields and how you're side by side.
300, yeah.
Yeah, the 300. And you are protecting each other from the external threats. You're not second guessing your teammate in that moment. You know he has your back and we're locked in arm in arm. But the worst part is being a part of a team where there's internal threats while you're trying to fight the external threats. And if you don't have that circle of safety, so much is at stake. So I remember that chapter really mirroring this chapter from The Way of the Shepherd.
I didn't think of it like that. Yeah. Because how hard, it must be hard if you're trying to deal with, like you said, something external, but you can't even trust the people around you. That would be, oof.
Yeah, it just, one, it destroys the feeling of safety, as we've been talking about, but also destroys productivity, right? If I can't focus on my work because I'm worried about stepping on eggshells, tiptoeing around my teammates, I'm not going to be all that God created me to be. So this chapter, I know every chapter is essential. It's like we can't go one chapter without saying this has been the best chapter.
Right,
Every chapter has been so fruitful, but this one, once you've established, I mean, I think all these chapters kind of coincide with one another. They overlap. It's like a linear fashion. It's like gears. They're rubbing against each other all at the same time. But yeah, so not Simon. That was the other author. Pentek and Lehman. They talk about 3 things that leaders must do in order to create safety in their team's pasture. And obviously, in this book, they've been using the illustration of sheep in a pasture. And the first thing of those 3 that we're going to unpack today, among other things, is that we need to get rid of fear. There should be no reason for our teammates to be coming into work fearful. So I want to hear your opinion, in addition to the insights from this book. Dawson, why is fear such a big deal? Why is that something that we need to make sure we get rid of at all costs? Like, what's the big deal with fear?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing in how I understand the word fear is I just replace it with just uncertainty, because I think naturally we're all people that love control. And that's the biggest thing when you think of, like, I listen to podcasts and things about how to help people that might have depression, anxiety. And a lot of it has to do with them just feeling a lack of control. I'm not necessarily saying, oh, if you are dealing with something like that, it means that you have no control of it. No, that's not what I'm saying, because everyone at some point in their life has some kind of lack of control. But just uncertainty is so hard. And like, I imagine in this book, anytime going into work, if you're just not sure, if you're just uncertain about how your day is going to go, that in itself can just be so hard to deal with. And that can then translate to just fear. Because if you're afraid of something, a lot of times it's because you're not knowing what's going to happen if you're amongst that thing. If you're afraid of spiders, it's because you're not know what the spider is going to do, you know, and it's things
And
like
they're freaky looking.
Yeah. And they're freaky. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. But yeah, so
the uncertainty piece is so key. And I'm glad you said that word, because in this book, they talk about one of the ways to eliminate fear is to keep your team informed, right? Which I don't know if I ever recognized that information is power until reading this and pursuing my master's degree in organizational leadership. I never realized that having information was like give you power and certainty. And as leaders, it is very important that we dispense information that's crucial to the flourishing of our team. That we don't withhold it, that we don't delay it, that we are like, oh yeah, I forgot, Johnny. Here's some information you probably should have known a couple of weeks ago. And poor little Johnny's like, if I knew this a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't be freaking out every day, right? And to us as a leader, we would think, oh, no big deal. You know, he just got the information late. But little do we know, without that piece of information, they would have had, if they had that information, they would have been so at peace. I think we kind of maybe brush it off like, you know, information station, I'm the information station. And that's the thing. You have all the information, so there's no reason for you to stress. Like, you already know what's going on. Other people don't know what's going on. So if you can eliminate that uncertainty, it's going to be super beneficial to them. I remember reading, actually, in my master's degree, a book about ethics and how it was like unethical to like withhold information that the team needs to know. So not only is it a bad leadership issue, but it could become an unethical issue because information is power. And it talks about the dark side of leadership is keeping people in the dark. So
makes sense as to also why I'm pretty sure that's illegal, right? Withholding information from like the cops can also.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So just like that.
Exactly. An accessory to murder or whatever the crime may be.
And that's probably why, because like you said, knowing something of a situation is very, very important. Not getting it out, you're not doing anybody justice. Yeah. I think this is especially important, especially with people that are in relationships. If you're struggling with something internally, you know, whether it's finances, stuff like that, if you're not informing your spouse or anybody like that, but that's you're letting that eat you up and letting you lash out at certain things or act differently.
Yeah.
Not talking it out will then make that other person very, very stressed because they're not knowing why you're acting like this. They're not knowing why you might be frustrated all the time, this and that. And that can then lead to them thinking about all this stuff when in reality, if you just communicate it, no, I'm stressed about this. Like you just said, if I'd known that, we could just talked it through and figured it out. Yeah.
Right.
So,
which is why a good leader is a good communicator, not just like a public speaker. I'm not saying that. Well, usually good leaders are good public speakers, but like a good communicator. In all the different institutions I've been a part of, whether it was in high school or at the Bible college I was at, or Warner, the common thread, the common complaint people had about leadership was like, oh, communication. Word of Life was the Bible college I went to. So it's like, oh, classic Word of Life communication. And I get to Warner, it's like, oh, classic Warner communication. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not specific to these different institutions. It's a universal problem that if we can work on, and obviously not everybody's going to feel like I'm informed enough. For some people that want to know everything. And we can't just give everyone everything. There is confidentiality. There is leaders know things that we won't know, and that's why they're the leader. So we're not necessarily talking about being completely transparent to where everything is revealed to everyone regardless of their maturity level. That's a whole separate issue. But when it comes to communicating things, that helps build trust. And trust is ultimately, I think, the antidote to fear. If I can trust you, Dawson, I know you're a good man and you're a man of your word, I have no reason to fear you. Yeah. Even if you are my boss and have the power to fire me, I know that you're a good guy that communicates well.
Yeah.
So communication is huge. Any more thoughts on that communication piece? I think you kind of hit on it, but.
Yeah, I think like you're mentioning, if you're a boss of a situation and you're obviously entrusted with a lot more different roles than someone that might be under that, with just a little bit less responsibility. So if you're the CEO of a company, you're overlooking a lot of different things rather than someone who might just be starting off. So to touch on your point, a CEO can't just tell the first level employee every single thing that he does because there's not enough time in the day. But like the book mentioned, keeping people informed of, if salaries are cutting, if people are starting to go under, if there's certain, I don't know, someone's going to get fired, or I'm not sure the different things just because I'm not necessarily in that sort of role, but it's just more so keeping people informed about things that could pertain to them. I think it's like the biggest thing.
Sure. If it's going to affect them, they should know about it.
Yeah.
Right. I think the classic example when I was working in the church world is that we do a lot of different projects, and we probably do this in university as well, which requires a lot of departments. Like, all right, we need, like, for example, we do things with like admissions and student life need to be present for orientation or whatever. Similar to our church, we had different functions. And I remember I always felt bad for the tech guys because I feel like they were never invited to the brainstorming meetings, but then they were asked to do a bunch of stuff like last minute. And I'm like, man, to the tech guys out there, I apologize on behalf of everyone. If they were just invited to the initial meeting, I think that would have saved them a lot of fear, a lot of franticness, and a lot of anxiety. I'm not a tech guy, but I've watched tech people before. So if the right players were called to the table during the discussion portion, the brainstorming portion, the discernment portion of the project, then that would help them be less fearful, less stressed. And that's just a good form of communication. So regardless of what the project is everyone informed? Right? Has everyone had an opportunity to share their piece about said project? And we've talked about this before, is bringing everybody in, making sure everyone feels a part of the team.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big way to improve communication, which reduces fear. So the second, that was the first thing we got to get rid of if we want to create a safe environment for our sheep, a safe pasture for our sheep, is remove fear. The second thing that Dr. Pentak or Dr. Newman, characters are throwing me off, Dr. Lehman shared is that we need to get rid of a rivalry. Can you unpack for us what that means, the whole rivalry piece?
Yeah, that's something that was also touched on in the book and brought something to light to me. The example that he used in there was if you have a family and you have children, growing up as kids, people have different chores. And he said, you want to eliminate rivalry. So what you do is, in the book, he said that sheep, if you're not constantly moving them around to greener parts of the pasture and letting them all have something to eat, they're just going to fight over the one piece if you don't constantly move them. So the example he used in the book was if you have a bunch of children and you give one person the responsibility of taking out the trash, the other one cleaning the toilets, and then the other one's, I don't know, dusting. The person that's dusting's
definitely the best of the three.
Yeah, got the best of the three. And he said, there's nothing worse than knowing that you're the designated, garbage
boy
for life, right?
Yeah.
So he said, constantly trying to rearrange so that everyone sort of gets a little bits and pieces of different responsibilities. But I think within a company or within a team, I think it's more so just dispersing responsibility, but also not making it to where people have to internally fight over the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this in last week's episode, but he talks about in his book, sharing with each team member the importance of their role, right? It's not like you got the junior varsity level role and this person has the varsity level. Obviously, there's differences of pay based on the position. I get that. I don't think we can ever remove that where it's like socialistic. Everyone makes the same amount, even though we all do different work. We have different experience. But still, even if I'm lower down on the org chart, that my value shouldn't be derived from that. A good leader will be like, you're so important for our team. And it's not a whole like ladder climbing game of who can get to the top spot first. It's no, we're a team. We believe in the mission and we're going to work on this together. So I think that helps remove rivalry, is making sure everybody sees their own importance.
Yeah.
And individually, but then in collaboration with the whole team.
Yeah. And I think that's a good one as well. Like, my wife is a teacher. She's a second grade teacher. And I believe kindergarten through second grade, I don't believe they're tested. Okay. So all that means is at the end of the year, you take like a state test, and then depending on what that grade is, I believe that dictates the grade of the school. And I think you take state tests in third, fourth, and fifth. So if her role isn't communicated as well in second grade, first, or kindergarten, as in, oh, well, they're not state tested grade, so they're not as important. Well, no, you need to communicate. No, you guys are just as important, because if you guys aren't helping these kids learn things when they get to the state level grades,
it's too late.
They're not going to thrive.
Yeah.
But, I could see how if you're not necessarily, like you said, communicate how important that role is, you could think, all right, well, because I'm technically not graded on that, my role might not be as important. But it's like, no, you have to communicate. No, you guys are just as important, because if you guys don't do your job, this isn't going to work. And same thing back to the kids. If, as much as it might be unfortunate to know that you're the garbage person for the week, if you're not communicating, no, you don't understand. If you don't take out the trash and it gets left, that's just going to be more trash, and it's going to cause us more problems. So I like that aspect. I forgot about that, of just communicating the effectiveness and the importance of people's roles will go far.
Absolutely. And he also mentions giving everyone equal opportunity to grow. I think like professional development, obviously the senior leader can't invest into every employee. That's why he's got vice presidents or whatever your model is in an organization you have. But everybody should be getting professional development opportunities, so that people don't feel neglected, right? We're ever I never felt this way because my parents were great, but I imagine that the kid who feels neglected because their brother or sister is having a whole lot of success and they're getting all the posts on Instagram, Facebook. My family didn't operate this way, but I've seen examples of this. Like, oh, Johnny is doing amazing, but Billy is not doing amazing. And it feels like he doesn't have any opportunities to grow. Or maybe in a classroom, right? A teacher kind of picks their star student and is investing in them more than the student that isn't as intellectually inclined. So just giving them equal opportunities. And then also, I'd say to reduce rivalry is obviously it all starts at the top when it comes to leadership. Is your leader, what the leader does is what the people will do. So if the leader's transactional, cutthroat, then everyone else is probably going to be transactional and cutthroat. And I'm not going to see you as a person to collaborate with. I'm going to see you as a rival that I need to compete against. So if the boss is constantly cutthroat, transactional, then what do you think is going to happen? Everyone's going to be right. There's going to be a huge rivalry because the boss is being cutthroat and crazy. We will as well. We'll match that same energy. Which leads us to the third thing we have to remove to create safety for our employees, our team members, is to remove pests. And this one really sunk in when, if you read the book, the sheep metaphor of all the bugs that would pest the sheep if they weren't taken care of, and it was gross. Like they lay eggs in the cuts and stuff. It was a very graphic imagery. I'm like, ooh. So I hear pest. It has a whole another flavor to it because I'm just thinking of the sheep with swords with maggots in them. But when it relates to not working with sheep but working with people, what are some pests that can make your pasture not safe?
Yeah. In the book, like James said, it basically talked about how there was a pasture that just wasn't taken care of very well, and a bunch of the sheep just had been infected from all these pests. And the way I think of it in terms of what it could be, either on a team, in a family, things like that, it's things that seem small at the time that if aren't taken care of at said time, it can grow into something worse. So, like they said, some of the examples that they use is they said like there's a fly. Okay, that's why if you go back to chapter 1 of what we talked about, I believe that was knowing the condition of your flock. So if you're not constantly checking up on people, you might not see that little pest that might have slowly been infecting someone. And in this book, it talks about how it can slowly go into the brain and then affects everything else, because
sheep
the
could die.
The sheep can die,
if
do
it's
all
not
stuff.
addressed.
And so going back to the first one, if you're not constantly checking up on the state of your flock, these pests can get in there, cause a bunch of stuff. But some of the examples that they used in there are like overdoing emails. So if someone is constantly getting a bunch of emails on things that could just be, walk down the hall, hey, this is all I need, or this and that, this is what's going on. If you're just constantly getting emails or something like that about things that might not be that important, those can be just things that, again, small,
gnaw at you a little bit,
but over time it can drive you crazy. But I just think of a lot of things that could not necessarily be huge things, because when you think of a pest, just something that's kind of just there, but if not taken care of, it can grow. So I think it's just a bunch of things that seem small at the time, but if not taken care of, it can grow into something more.
For sure. Not all pests are created equal, like you were alluding to. Something needs to be dealt with right away, and it's super destructive to your team. Some could just be annoyances that built up. And honestly, if something annoys me from my leader, I do need to do my part and share with them, like, hey, is there a reason why you send emails out like this? Is there a reason you don't come to my office and tell me this thing? And the leader could be just not self-aware, like, oh, I didn't realize that was a big deal. So that's part of a teamwork aspect, right? Something that's pesky that someone does. What if you just asked them about it? They might had no clue, because we all have blind spots that what we were doing was pesky behavior. Obviously, you got some people that if they're confronted, be like, well, just suck it up, buttercup. Like, this is how I roll, right? And if that's the case, then maybe you need to find a new team to work for if you can't. If it's a pest that's that bad. Some people just go like, you know what, I'm not going to lose the battle to win the war, or however that phrase goes. I'm just going to take the L and move on. But there's some pests that are like, no, this is going to be detrimental to my long-term health. As a man, as a father, as a husband. I know for me, in one of my places that I worked at, I'm like, man, I could sit here and just take the hits on some of the things that I find are inconsistent with the leadership style. But long term, I know that it was going to help. I think it was going to create bad habits in me. I was going to start becoming numb, because when you start to resist pests that are bothering you, you do start becoming numb to things, and then you just become numb all around. And I don't want to lose my sensitivity personally. I love being able to be sensitive to what I feel like the Holy Spirit's telling me, or what my emotions are telling me. But if I'm constantly like hardening my heart because of these pests and not telling somebody or leaving, then internally we're just going to get cold and stone cold. So this book talks about how pests can be from a multitude of things. They actually zero in on how the leader can be a pesty person to his team. But obviously there's foul teammates that we've talked about. One bad apple ruins the whole bunch, and that's why we hire slow but fire fast. Pests could be just boundary issues. I remember recognizing when I was in a job, like, man, if I'm ever a leader, I'm not going to email and text people outside of office hours, because that's pesty. That breaks boundaries, things of that nature. So, and boundaries make a place safe, right? There's no boundaries, and it's a free for all. Western style, forget the term, duel or something, with no rules of play, then it's not a safe place. But any other thoughts on the pest?
Yeah, again, I think for me, a lot of times I just try to replace certain words with others just so it's better for my understanding. But when you think of a pest, you just think of something that's annoying. So
Yeah.
I think, like you said, just trying to eliminate anything that you just find annoying that at the time can be annoying, but can lead to something else. So like another example that they use in the book is someone that's just constantly talking to people, interrupting people, maybe taking a lot of their time so you can't get your work done. At the start, it might be a little annoying, you know, all right, he's in here again. Can't do my work because, you know, he's all up in our business. But if you constantly let that slide without, you know, nicking it, what is the nicking it at the butt? Is that
Nipping it at the butt.
Nipping it, yeah. If you don't nip in the butt right there, that can cause boundaries not being made, and then him thinking it's okay, and then, you know, you're upset, you're frustrated because you know that he's going to come in. So then you can't get your work done. So then, you know, that can lead to you going to work already with a poor mindset because you hadn't dealt with the thing right at the start, setting that boundary, things like that. So I think it's important. I think this is definitely one that you have to be self-aware about as a leader, but also like the other chapters stated, you just have to have some, like a really good form of trust to where if you have people coming to you with certain things, that you open up the floor to people coming to you when they're frustrated. Because I feel like I guess it comes back to the what this chapter is about, just creating a safe environment. Because if you don't do that, people aren't going to tell you when there's certain pests that they're dealing with, you know? So
truer words are never spoken, right? If people don't feel emotionally safe to air their grievances, then they're not going to help you become self-aware. If they notice someone else get hammered because they brought up a flaw of the leader or a flaw of the communication, ain't nobody speaking up unless they're bold. So if you want to create that circle of safety, the safe pastures allow feedback. And feedback's great. You know, I personally would love to know if I'm doing something that's annoying somebody. I like, if anybody in the student life department at Warren University, there's something I do that's annoying, can you please tell me this week? I actually want to know. And I know there's a balance. I get it. It's a give and take. I might find something annoying, but it might be like, that's just who they are. And I just need to not be so offended by it. Right. Like, for example, I had a boss, and I love you, boss, if you know who you are as you listen. He was very OCD, kept our workplace very clean. And I'm not that OCD. And I'm like, okay, does it really have to be, the chairs really have to be that straight and things like that. And I wasn't going to fight that. That's how he is. That's who he was. He's OCD, wants to be organized. I will not get offended by it or be like, this is a pesty thing. No, I'm like, this is how he is. I'm going to accommodate to it. So I'm all about accommodating. It's hard sometimes. I just want it my way. But that's what being a team is all about. You accommodate to someone else's thing. Don't get annoyed by it. Don't see it as a pest. But at the same time, though, there are actual pests that you need to speak up and tell them, like, I just can't take this anymore. You need to stop doing that. So takes wisdom, discernment, and prayer for sure. Well, Dawson, any final thoughts on this chapter? Make your pasture a safe place.
This one, I feel like we were just talking about this earlier as well. Every single chapter you read, this one is just as good as you know the one before. It has so many good points and things like that. But this one, for sure, I think if you don't have safety, at least, it's so hard to do everything else.
Sure.
And I just think back to just home, like with your family. That should be like the most safe place. Just some place that you can just go home and just be able just to let it all out. Be yourself. And I know how hard it is for some families to thrive when they're not safe. And I mean, you hear a lot of times all these kids, where they're coming from, families that are broken just because it's just not a safe environment. So it just goes to show how important it is to just be self-aware as a leader. Just make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that your team, your job, your department, everything is just really, really safe. Because an example that they used in the book is if you're not openly communicating, a lot of people might have, they said, like water
around the coffee pot,
around the coffee pot,
where
everyone's just tiptoeing, right? Because everyone's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Did you hear what's going on? This and that. So just it is a big ask as a leader, but it's just something that comes with the job, right? If you're the leader of something, it just comes part of the role. But safety is so important because I think this might be one of the most important parts, because if you don't feel safe, you literally can't be yourself and you can't thrive.
Yeah.
So as
So
much as
true.
if you have everything else, right, but people aren't safe, they can't be their best. So just making sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure your department or your family or your team is just feeling safe at its core. Yeah.
That's good. And that's a perfect way to close. Leaders out there, what better way can you serve your team than making a safe place for them to spend a majority of their life in, right? They spend a majority of their week in the office.
Yeah. And I think about it when you think of Jesus, because that's the one thing that is so hard for some people, but Jesus is so safe that sometimes, and this might be another episode, but Jesus is such a safe place that people are almost scared to come to him, because you have to bring up all the other things that you've done. You might not want to do it, but being with Jesus and being in a place that is safe, it then allows you to then be yourself and to thrive. And I think if you want to learn how to just be a safe environment, you can read this book, but also just take after Jesus and how he is and how he talks to us, and how he just has open arms just to have us come to him. And yes, there's standards and things that we should do if we want to be like Jesus, but he's just so safe, and it's not a coincidence that people have really, really good relationships with Jesus seem to be the best people that are thriving in all aspects of life.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that.
So
yeah, Jesus is the ultimate example, the role model of a leader that created a safe place for his followers and continues to create safe places even to this day as followers of Christ. We encourage you to look into the readings of Jesus in addition to this book to learn how to create a culture of safety. And that's all we have for this episode of Thrive and Die. We're so glad you've joined us for this leadership series. Be sure to check out previous episodes. Again, we miss Joel. Shout out to Joel. He'll hopefully come back one day, and eventually we're going to lose you too. So I'm going to be by myself, running solo.
We'll have to think of some people to
get some new recruits.
Yeah, get some.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button on YouTube and subscribe. If you're watching on Spotify, if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5-star rating, that'd be great. And then follow us on the channel to continue supporting us. That'd be awesome. This is Thrive and Die, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. Have a great rest of your day.